All right, we have it all covered for you, as usual. Our own Courtney Donahoe tracking those moves in metals for you. Lydia Thew takes a look at the impact of today's disappointing retail sales report on mall REITs. Andrew Keene is talking with traders for us at the Chicago Board Options Exchange. And our featured guest here is Joe Saluzzi, co-head of equity trading at Themis Trading. And Joe, I want to start with you. It looks like, the financials, once again, the biggest losers here. And I know that you have some opinions on the stress tests. Sheila Bair actually came out yesterday and said that the first quarter profits were managed, and you think they used the time that they had pushing back the results to get their secondaries ready. It doesn't seem like that really helps, though, as far as getting their secondaries ready, because they've been down for the past 3 days.
It was a rigged game. Okay, it's a rigged game. It was a rigged game last week. There was no doubt about it. The only way they get those secondaries out is to get that market popped. They used a number of things to do it, and you talked about the mark-to-market. The main thing was the monster short squeeze that was going on last week. And how the momentum guys were just constantly pushing it up, squeezing the shorts, being aided by guys like Warren Buffett and other market pundits who just kept screaming, buy, 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 buy. Look, once they got the secondaries out, we knew it would happen. The stocks are falling. This is not a surprise. What does concern me, though, is that they constantly change the rules of the game and in the middle of your trade. So a guy like me is ultra bearish. I'm as bearish as it can be. I am very uncomfortable with a short financial position
right now. But do you actually think that we'll go back to the old lows?
Yes. I do. I do think the S&P will certainly go back to the old lows. I think the economy has a major problem on its hands. There's so many. If I hear the term green shoot one more time, I'm gonna. By the way,
don't hurt Carol.
You guys have to ban that term. You have to ban it.
More like green weeds right now.
Green weeds. They got whacked out by a weed whacker this morning when the resale sales came. But really, the market will test those lows again. It's on its way there, but it's going to be stopped all the way along with government intervention.
So I want to bring back in Joe Saluzzi, my favorite Brooklyn guy. So where do you see gold? Where do you see it moving from here?
I like it still. I've always liked it. I think you probably got another maybe 10% upside here before some profit taker kicks in. Just like you said, it's a safety mechanism, and it's also an anti-inflation mechanism. So you get two for the price of one there. Some people will claim that there's really no value to it. There's no building block of it. But so what? It does what it's supposed to do.
All right, let me ask you about oil, because it's had a nice bounce off its lows as well. What about oil?
I loved oil the last time I was here, and we were talking about $60. It's right around there.
Well.
I did. I took that off the table. I did sell that oil recently. But I think right now, those numbers today, even though they were a big drop in inventory, they were more supply-driven than they are demand-driven. So I'm as bearish as a guy like me who can come in. You can't really say I'm going to buy oil if the economy falls apart.
Right.
So that's where I'm kind of torn on that one. But I will buy it back in the low 50s.
You can if China's boosting its imports like mad.
It's absolutely. But if the U.S. economy really goes into the tank, that's going to drive us all down. But oil itself, even if it's a supply-driven story, that's okay. But I'd like to see it pull back towards the low 50s. I'd be a buyer again.
I mean, do we, at this point, because we've been kind of talking about it, too far, too fast, where do we go from here? I mean, at this point, do we need to go back and really just focus on what's going on in the global economy? It's still pretty lousy out there.
Absolutely. I mean, let's look at the unemployment figures. What a charade that was. Those were awful numbers, and somehow they spun them as positive. 8.9% unemployment with a 15.8% real rate. Let's look at the real rate here.
Well, that's the rate that not everybody's focusing on.
No one wants to talk about that. That'll probably go north of 20 by the time this is all said and done, and the regular rate of 11, 12%. What does that do? And here's an important question. What does that do to government tax revenues when there's that many unemployment people? You saw the deficit in April of down $20 billion, and then they spun it as, they didn't have to pay that much taxes. They got big refunds. They don't have jobs. That's why they got refunds.
I'm not trying to egg you on here, but do you feel vindicated by the disappointing retail sales numbers?
No.
Because it looked like for a while retail sales were positive, and everyone was saying, people can still buy stuff because real incomes are rising year over year. Yeah. But as long as unemployment's increasing, I kept thinking, where is this money? Where is this shopping going to come from?
I don't want to look like every time I say bad news, I'm happy. I don't want to see that. I have a family to feed. I have a job to keep myself. But I'm a realist. And I walk into the mall, I see a lot of people not shopping. I see them walking around with empty bags or no bags at all. That's the real test. So, you want to see them improve.
Maybe folks think that the government's just going to come in and make the next step.
Well, then where are we going now? Really, think about it. If the government's got to hold our hand and fix every problem that we have, then we are no longer a capitalist society. We're heading towards socialism, and we might as well go to a different country at that point.
It started to sound like it this morning.
I actually have a question for Mr. Joe Saluzzi. Joe,
One of the things that you mentioned as you were twittering back and forth with me was you saw pharma as perhaps looking like a good rotational kind of defensive play. Talk to me a little bit about why you see that.
It did look strong. I think people who have rotated maybe from out of the financials into tech, now they're looking for another spot, being that tech is weakened so much. And big pharma is still obviously a solid defensive play, although it did pull back at the end of the day. I think that's something that if you do need to keep a core position in an equity, that's where I would be right now.
Actually, I wanted to bring one point up because I'm getting a viewer email. We were talking earlier about commodities and what China is doing there, and Rodrigo writes in and says, is China buying oil, gold, and copper, telling us that it's starting to hedge against its exposure to the dollar? Do you think once they have large positions in these, they could start voicing their concerns more? It's actually an interesting point.
Sure. I mean, they could be stockpiling. Who knows what they're doing over there? This could be a power play.
Well, they are, though. There's been articles about them, buying up commodity firms and so on and so forth, really kind of positioning themselves for the recovery and for years to come.
I have no idea what a state-run economy like that could be possibly doing. We obviously know what our economy is doing because we're not state-run. We're supply and demand driven. They could be doing something totally different.
Although that could be changing, as you point out. Joe, and quickly ask, what's your take on the Obama administration saying maybe we can regulate pay for even non-TARP banks?
Look, I love the casino analogy. I use this all the time. The government owns the casino. We are all just players at the table. They can change the limits of the table. They can close the table anytime they want. And as long as those rules go on, you have to be careful how you play in the game. And that's my problem with the market right now. As they continue to change the rules, whether it's executive pay or short selling or more transparency, which is a good thing, by the way.
The government didn't get us into this position.
Well, certainly, there were certain greedy individuals, but you cannot look to the government to help you. The longer they continue to prolong the agony, the worse the end is going to be. This is going to end ugly.
As soon as they can. Don't you really think they want to get out as soon as...
We'll go back to the other argument. Maybe they don't. Maybe they like the power of having what they're doing right now. I don't know. But either way...
I think that's a very good point, and you can pause on that point. And also, we don't have any more time.
We got to go.
Maybe they like the power. Joe Salluti, thanks for joining us.
We're back at you. I'll see you later.